Today's presentation is Purposeful Marketing, how B2B businesses can overcome the myths of inbound influencers and social media to actually get results. Give you a little quick overview of what we're going to do, 4 parts. The first part is the myths that steered B2B businesses off course in the 2010s. Next up, we're going to talk about where B2B marketing is headed in the 2020s. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how B2B companies can move forward by marketing with purpose. And then we're going to finish it off by talking about three things that you guys can do today. All right, so I want to make it clear who this presentation is for, okay? Starting off, it's for B2B businesses, companies that sell to other businesses. Pretty easy, right? Next up, it's for SMBs, small to mid-enterprise companies, so up to about $100 million annual revenue. And then this one is for companies that are not at the cool kids table, okay? So if you're in food, fashion, travel, tech, luxury, pretty much anything your like 19-year-old nephew or niece would follow on Instagram, this really isn't as pertinent to you. For everybody else, you are in the right place because this is a presentation that's more geared towards you guys, professional services, B2B, manufacturing, and I feel like a lot of times this is an underserved market when it comes to marketing guidance. So we're going to start off with 4 myths, and we created these because marketing is changing and what we call the FOMO wave is starting to crash. I think last decade, as you'll see, there was a lot of new cool things and everybody was like wanting to dive in without really understanding how to do it the right way. And a lot of these tools were very powerful, still are very powerful, but they just needed to be navigated the right way. So the first one we're going to talk about is inbound. So if anyone's not familiar with inbound marketing, it's a term coined by a software company called HubSpot. They're out of Boston, and they are a marketing automation software. And they've really evolved over the years, but they coined this term inbound based on this idea that they felt like people didn't want to be advertised to anymore. They didn't feel people wanted to be sold to anymore. What they felt like was people were going to make buying decisions solely by finding companies that created the type of content that would resonate with them, and then companies would take this content and nurture these prospects into the point where when they were ready to buy, that's when they would jump in, okay? So the myth that we have here is if you post it, they will come. So here's how HubSpot first explained inbound. They've got attract, convert, close, delight, which is actually pretty accurate. You'll see we do something almost exactly like this. And on the delight side, it makes a lot of sense. You delight your customers by posting stuff on social media. You create smart content, surveys, get some feedback. You close your customers through having sophisticated CRM, email with automated workflows. So you can make sure that you're continuing to nurture prospects that way. And you can convert them through forms and calls to action and landing pages. But what really seemed off to me was always attract. So this is how they used to explain it. You would attract customers by blogging, by keywords. It's not even an action, and through social publishing, which is so the idea of like, all right, well, let's write a bunch of blogs, let's post a bunch of stuff on social media, and then everyone's just going to come in and just love what we're doing. I thought was just not going to work, and it didn't work. HubSpot created a agency group. We're now a HubSpot agency. I'll show you why in a minute. But back then, they were really pushing agencies to ride this content wave and really work within these retainers that were honestly a little crazy. I know it's hard to see up here, so I'll just kind of talk about what this $8,000 package would be. So this would be a $96,000 a year investment. You get 10 blog articles a month. You get a social media community manager, you get email marketing, and you get reporting, and then you get strategy and inbound marketing campaigns, which are just fancy ways of trying to make yourself sound a little bit better than you are. So $8,000 a month, $96,000 a year for a bunch of content, post it and they will come. I really feel like that's going to lead to a lot of ROI problems, right? And you don't have to take it from me, take it from HubSpot, because they changed their model completely. They added marketing, sales, and service to the idea of inbound. We're just going to concentrate on marketing and sales here. And the attract tools are much different. Attract tools from the sales side, calling, prospecting, creating email templates, scheduling meetings, conversational bots. And then over here, you've got ads, which, I mean, we've all been on our phone, we're all on social media, we see ads all the time, you know. They tend to be best on Instagram, right? Like, I feel like every time you're like, they're like, God, they know me. Then, you know, video ads, still I'm sure some blogging, social media, content strategy, whatever. But the idea is that you can't just post a bunch of content and then you're gonna be able to go through this process successfully. So the next myth we're going to talk about is that people who love your company will naturally want to interact with it daily on social media. Okay? So as social media really started ramping up at the beginning of this decade, it was like the new coolest thing ever. It was going to change how we interacted, how we communicated, and that's totally true. It absolutely did. It changed everything. But everybody, it kind of came that FOMO of like, oh my gosh, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to, you know, put all of our chips in. So B2B businesses were like, let's do it all. Let's go. I had a client in 2015 who was scolding me saying, listen, man, why do I have to find out about Meerkat? Why aren't we doing anything on Meerkat right now? Okay. I don't know, because it didn't exist 3 weeks later. But really what they should have done is listen to this lady. That's my mom. And she has this phrase that I grew up with, which there's a time and place for everything. Okay? And this is why I would, you know, spend my days up in forts with my friends cursing, but I would never do it at school. This is why my son, my 5-year-old son, will just walk away from the dinner table, come back and say, sorry everybody, I had to toot, but I'm not allowed to toot in front of girls. So, you know, the idea is that there was a great time and there was a great place. And we kind of figured this out later in the decade. The Content Marketing Institute did a study that looked at the channels that B2B marketers use to distribute content rated by importance to their overall content marketing success. And you know, you see email and print up there, but LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and SlideShare, those 4 tended to be the most effective for B2B companies, right? And we all know in our daily lives, it's much more popular to use Facebook and Instagram. More people are using that on the day-to-day, but it really is a little bit more on the B2C. And yeah, and so that was an area where social media was new, but everybody wasn't exactly sure how they were going to use it. The third myth was that purchasing influence comes from people with a large social media following. So let's hit up the word influence real fast. It's the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something, or the effect itself. But when we think of influencer, what do we think of? All right, people on Instagram who've got a ton of followers, and that's not wrong. But there's stuff that you need to consider when you want to dive into influencer marketing, especially as a B2B company. Now, the first stat is that 78% of social influencers for brand collaborations worldwide use Instagram as their primary social media platform. So that directly kind of contradicts what we recognize was effective for B2B companies, just the platform Instagram in general. So the next one is about how 90% of companies that invest in influencer marketing measure their campaign success by engagement. And we're going to talk a little bit later in the presentation about engagement, what we call brand metrics, and how they don't really matter unless you understand their relationship to conversion metrics. So engagement numbers always make us feel good, likes, comments, we always feel good when we see those things, but they don't always necessarily move the needle. And I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that later on. But 76% of businesses that utilize influencer marketing consider determining the ROI of my influencer marketing programs their biggest challenge. Well, that's a pretty big challenge to me. You know, if you're going to be investing in marketing, I think you want to at least understand what a return looks like and how it could become possible. So, that was from Linquia influencer marketing study in 2018. So let's rethink influence a little bit for B2B as thought leadership. Okay, the PR firm Edelman did a study at the beginning of 2019 on thought leadership and how it affects B2B buying, and they found out that 58% of B2B decision makers made buying decisions based on thought leadership. All right, similar stats, 47% of C-suite executives shared contact information after reading thought leadership, and 61% of C-suite executives are willing to pay a premium to work with an organization that they feel like has a clear vision. So yeah, like I said, that was from Edelman. I think that really sums up where influence can come from B2B marketing decisions through real thought leadership. Myth 4 is that Google and Facebook like you, the consumer, more than me, the advertiser. This is absolutely not true. This is what Google AdWords used to look like, okay? They were on the side, they were at the top. Absolutely none of us ever wanted to click on them because we thought they were spammy ads, right? The idea behind Google was that they were going to put the most organic content that would answer and will fulfill the promise of your query right at the top. That's what they were going to do. Unfortunately, they realized that their ad platform was starting to lose money to Facebook, and they decided to change it all. So this is a search, this is a top of the fold search for a search engine optimization agency. So if you've invested in search engine optimization over the years, and you became the search engine optimization agency that was so good at what you did that you got the top spot on Google, well, nobody would even see it unless they go below the fold, because there's these 4 ads that really are answering this query, right? It really is. And it's even worse on mobile. I mean, it's really, really hard to be able to see any organic results unless you're in a really niche search, especially location searches really pop up a lot more on Google. So it's kind of understanding what search marketing is really becoming, and instead of just being like, we got to be on the top of a Google search, because that's really changed. Now, it changed because Facebook really started taking market share when it came to digital advertising. And they did it in 2012 with this beautiful idea of EdgeRank. This was the algorithm that was going to change your life, okay? They knew that one day in 2010, there was a little spot you were at lunch, and they promised you a free soda if you just liked their page on Facebook. And they know that you don't really like those people. You don't want to see their content every day. What you want to see, you want to see the engagements. You want to see the cute puppies, the cute babies. That's what you care about the most. So they created this awesome algorithm so that only the most important, most engaging things were in your feed. And that's how they sold it to you, and it was amazing, right? No, they were just building out their ad platform on a lie by holding brands hostage, okay? Because now in 2019, only 6.4% of a business page's likes see their content on average. So that means if organically you got 1,000 people to become your biggest fan, like you on Facebook, interact with your content every single day, 64 of them would see your content, unless you paid Facebook some money, and then they could make sure that everybody who likes your page could see it, as long as you paid them enough money. And I think this was a really big, I think there was this thread between a lot of these myths, was that everything was going to become this beautiful, euphoric, organic world where sales and advertising were going to kind of be minimalized, and and we were going to be able to create great content and create great brand messaging, and people were going to just resonate to it, and they were going to flock there. And unfortunately, I think some businesses kind of got burned by a lot of this. So let's talk about where we feel like things are headed, okay? In the 2020s, I really feel like focus is a #1 thing that's going to transform marketing this next decade. And it kind of comes back to this corollary between the lantern and the laser. What does the lantern do? It sheds as much light as possible so as many people can see as far as they can. Whereas the laser is more accurate. It more pinpoints exactly where it wants to go, and it sheds the light only to the people and the places that matter. So the way that this is really changing, in the old days, messaging 101, don't ruffle any feathers, don't say anything that might make somebody mad. And now it's really about leading and persuading with a point of view. And I want to expand a little bit on what I mean by that. With a point of view, it doesn't necessarily mean something that's like extreme, like a MSNBC versus Fox News kind of thing. It's more like the brand Yeti. You guys familiar with Yeti, who they make those reusable mugs that are like better than styrofoam at keeping your drinks cold? And it's really funny because when you think about a product like this, you're like, my gosh, that's great. If people are using this every day, then they're not getting plastic cups. It's a really eco-friendly product. Man, this is really great. And yet, I don't know anybody in California, one of the most eco-friendly, environmentally friendly places I've ever been, that actually uses one of these every day. But when I go back home to Georgia, where my parents are, every single person has one. because the way that they spoke to their target audience was, hey man, you wake up, you go hunting, it's cold out, you want your coffee to stay warm. You go in a NASCAR race, you want that beer to stay cold. We are like you, people like us, act like this is what we do, and you know what? Why don't, we have these products that are gonna be able to solve some of these problems that maybe you didn't even realize existed. And so all across the southern states and more rural areas in America, people are refilling these every single day and not using plastic. And they've really created one of the most eco-friendly products of the last decade by advertising and resonating with people that you never would think that would be the type of people who would jump on board. So another old thing that we used to talk about was trying to reach as many people as possible. Nowadays, we're going to pinpoint our target audience. We're going to talk a lot about that today. And then in the old days, marketing's job was to generate leads. You're going to see marketing's job is to support sales. That's how this has to work. Spending on brand and direct marketing and the performance will even out was this idea. There's this old cliche, 50% of marketing works, you just don't know what 50%. That's how agencies like ours got by in the 70s, 80s, and 90s by charging more and more for more services, right? But with the sophistication that we have today, we can figure out exactly what an integrated brand and direct marketing spends, what kind of return we can get. And I'm really excited to show you guys an example of how those can kind of work together. And lastly, there are these two departments, marketing and sales. I was actually talking to Evan about this yesterday, and he brought up this awesome point, is that in these worlds, very rarely have marketing people ever had a sales job, and very rarely have salespeople ever had a marketing job. And so they're naturally in these two different mindsets when really they should be in one beautiful unified department, which is just growth and helping grow companies. So let's kind of go through a few of these. So I want to talk about leading with a point of view here. This is a client of mine, We Rock the Spectrum. They're a kids gym that caters to children on the autism spectrum. And when I started working with them about 5 years ago, they had a couple locations here. Now they have 70 across the world. They blew up really because they were going to create a place of inclusion. People, when I say caters to special needs children, people are like, oh, is that the special needs gym? No. It's an inclusive gym. All kids are supposed to be there. It's a place where special needs children and their neurotypical siblings and friends and neighbors can all come together. But having the heart and that connection to the special needs world is what's driven the brand, and it's really helped resonate with different franchisees. And one of the things they realized about 2 years in, as they were evaluating the performance of each individual location, was there was a direct correlation between franchisees that had a connection to the special needs world, whether it be a child, whether it be they were an occupational therapist and had been teaching this population for a long time, and they were having so much more success than these other entrepreneurs who had great hearts and were trying to run the business the best they could, but there was just this level of passion that these other people could go to. And so they started changing how they accepted franchisees and really made it mandatory for any franchisee to have this sort of connection, and the results have been fantastic. They've been able to keep a lot more gyms open with the same ownership over time, and it's really by going right to that point of view of people like us who deal with our special needs children, our special needs students being on the outside. Like, we have that pain and that desire to get them on the inside so much that we will claw night and day to make it happen. So that's a great example of leading with a point of view. Next up, we want to pinpoint a target audience. You're probably wondering why there's a doll of Luke Skywalker and Yoda there. We'll get there in a second. But the first step in pinpointing a target audience is to find people with shared values. Okay, going back to that We Rock the Spectrum example, who is yearning to be able to get their special needs population together with the neurotypical kids. Next, identify and ignore the great customer who is not your great customer. Going back to Yeti, I mean, look at all the different outdoor brands that are out there, Patagonia, REI, they typically gear towards people who are more into like land conservation and more economic issues, or eco-friendly issues, whereas Yeti was like, no, we're not going to talk to those people. They're great customers. They obviously buy a lot, but our customer goes to NASCAR races. He hunts, he fishes, and we're going to talk to him like that. The third step is understanding how your product and services can help people obtain their goals, okay? You've got to understand how you can really help and if you are the best help for them, the customer. And lastly, you have to recognize that your customer is the hero and you are their guide. Your customer is Skywalker and you are Yoda. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to guide your customer to the promised land of where they need to go. So going back to some of the metrics we were talking about before, you have these brand focused metrics: impressions, site traffic, publicity value, followers, likes, comments, shares, some of those feel good metrics that make you feel like your brand is getting a little bit of awareness. But really what you want is for those to directly correlate to your conversion metrics, which are more sales purchases, form fills, marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads. If you're an e-commerce store, promos redeemed. And these two can really play with each other pretty nicely. I want to give you an example of how Facebook advertising has made this pretty easy to do. So you start off, if you start a brand, so let's say as our company, I wanted to start reaching out to different companies in the spaces that we like to work with and try and, we're going to advertise to them with a video. Okay, and so we spend a lot of money to go to these demographics. We're going to pick the cities, the areas we want, the type of job, job titles, all that fun stuff, interests, and all we're going to do is we're going to put a video out towards them, and we're going to figure out who is watching the video for 30 seconds or more. And what we're going to do is Facebook allows you to then put them in a custom audience. The custom audience rules we would create would be people who've watched our brand video for at least 30 seconds. So we're going to put them in a pool as a custom audience. Now, Facebook has a lot of different cool things with custom audiences. Okay, you can do you can get an email list and literally just do Facebook advertising towards that email list. The example I use with the video, you could also do if you could have a link in your ad, anybody who clicked the link. But you build these custom audiences. You start with the brand marketing to be able to get these impressions, to be able to get this interest, and that's when it kind of flips. You create that custom audience, and then when you start advertising to those people, that's when your expectation should move a little bit more to the direct response. That's where we want people to then fill out a form. We want them to download our content. That's when we need to start measuring the conversion metrics. And those play really nice together. And it's really a great way to be able to measure the effectiveness of both types of marketing that you're doing. All right, so the next up is a long quote. It's the hurt caused to companies of any size by the technology silos between marketing and sales departments will force a fundamental relook at how they deploy these technologies. Marketing and sales can no longer afford to be separated technologically or strategically. Bridging the age-old gap has to happen now to ensure continued revenue growth. This was the head of a personalization at Adobe. I'm not going to butcher her name. But the idea is, how do we make it easier for these two siloed people to come together? And technology is really one of the great answers, because you see it already with what I refer to as the merging sales and marketing technology race. And you've got two industry leaders, Salesforce, which is much more sales driven. They bought Pardot, which was marketing automation, and they've tried to integrate that into their system because they know that growth departments are all going to need to have things working together. HubSpot, on the other hand, we said earlier it was just a marketing automation software. You saw later that they pivoted a little bit to include sales, and they have a CRM now, and it's a really great product for lean companies with smaller sales staffs who are just kind of wading in the waters of doing more things that sales teams that are more sophisticated that use Salesforce would do. And what's neat about this is that each of these kind of caters to these two different forms of marketing. So Salesforce is much more correlated with account-based marketing, and HubSpot is a little bit more on the inbound marketing. So I want to talk about what those are. So account-based marketing is, very, very much comes from a sales background. It's identifying, not like, hey, if we could have 5 new customers, who would those customers be? And then having some fluffy dream world of what, it's like building out personas of, oh, they could be like this, or they'll be like that. It says, no. These are the 5 customers. These are the 5 companies. this is who I want. And then I'm going to create all of my marketing strategies towards getting in front of these 5 companies, as many people at these companies as I can. And I'm going to keep getting my message to them. I'm going to keep getting my meetings, and I'm going to market directly to those people. Whereas inbound marketing was much more about getting that wide pool, right? And being able to get as many people to become aware, get a little bit of interest, get to that point, go down the funnel of consideration, and then hopefully purchase. And what's cool is sales and marketing teams can really help each other on both of these sides, okay? If you have a sales team that's typically running the growth on the account-based side, they need the right presentations, they need the right messaging, they need all of those materials that marketing can support them with. And on the inbound side, where the sales can where the marketing team can really help a sales team is to be able to use these funnels to kind of weed out the people who are somewhat interested into real qualified leads. And these two can play really nice together in these dual strategies. And I'll kind of show you how some companies do that in a little bit. But the reason that they can do it so well is because they're all just taking the same model. You know, it's just attracting, connecting, closing, and delighting. On the inbound side, you might do some search marketing, some social media ads, some video ads, and then you're going to bring them to a website, and you're going to want them to fill out a form. And so you're going to put case studies out there to build your credibility, video tutorials to personalize things, and dangle a carrot of downloadable content that they're going to want in return for giving you. In return, you're going to get their contact information. Then as you close them, you're going to give them some sort of pitch, tell them what working with you would be like. Then you're going to, if that doesn't get the deal right there, you might get them in some sort of email automation. And then you might start running retargeting ads just so you can keep them top of mind in their buying decision. And then to delight them, educational emails, you can have them follow you on social media, educational blog posts. Now, on the flip side, on ABM, much more of a sales-driven focus, this is where you can get your, attracting by getting referrals, prospecting, doing some LinkedIn connecting, any cold calls or emails that way. And once you're trying to get those people to connect, you might mention an industry or relationship that you have that's connected to them. You might go over some case studies of companies that you've worked with, that you've helped, that are like them. And you're going to really personalize that type of content. You're going to call them by name. You're going to spend that time to really understand what they do and what they have done and who they've interacted with. And then very similarly, you got in the close, the vision pitch, you can go to email automation. Sales is known for a little bit more of experiential entertainment, to use the cliche of the closing a deal on the 18th green after you let the prospect win in golf. That's a perfect example of how companies still do that today. And you can delight people by taking them out to dinner, participating in events that they're at, or highlighting them in their content, in your content. Just two different ways of doing the same thing to help help that growth and being able to help really remove those silos of marketing and sales. I think this thing works better when I'm over here. Because at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is create a continuum where you're attracting and connecting prospects, closing them into customers, and delighting them enough that they become your biggest salespeople, and then they're helping you attract, connect, close, and delight. It's just a big continuum you're going after. So let's talk about the stakes here, okay? All right? So the winners in the 2020s, the people who are going to get ahead, these are going to be people who will have brand evangelists, but they're also going to have haters, okay? And they're going to do that because they have the courage to speak up and lose bad customers. Really, it's not even losing bad customers. It's losing great customers that aren't theirs. The other thing the winners are going to do is they're going to know how to spend money that provides a return. They're going to have a data-driven understanding of what they need to spend and the ROI that comes from it. And they're going to have marketing and sales completely synced. Now, on the other side, the losers, these are going to be the companies that have no haters, but they're not going to have any lovers either. Because, fortunately, they're not going to stand out in the crowd. They're just going to get lost in the shuffle. And they're going to continue to struggle figuring out how to get marketing and sales to work together. And then they're going to keep spending on ideas and, what if we did this? What if we did this? Instead of having a proven formula that they've built out. So what exactly does the promised land look like for these companies in, let's say, 2025? I really think there's going to be about 4 things. First one is the central technology for the sales and marketing, the system that's going to connect the CRM, the automation, and even customer support. The next thing is going to be these diversified ABM and lead gen strategies that are working together, that are bringing synergy for both parts of the marketing and the sales department, helping one another. Then we're going to have messaging on a mission squared. Can't pretend like we haven't seen this the last decade, but I think people are going to continue to go even further as the monoculture dies. I mean, remember we used to all watch the same TV shows now. Now there's like a million shows on Netflix, and we all are kind of in our own world and our own culture, and so we've really got to find our people in those worlds that we want to work with, and we got to send the message that's going to convert them. And lastly, we're going to be able to track and measure that brand indirect spend. And we're going to be able to determine the ROI based on that ratio. Okay, we do 70-30 direct versus brand, we get X amount. When we do 60-40, it goes like this. And we understand how that's going to work. So how can companies get there? That brings us to the purposeful marketing, what we created to try and be able to combat this. So this is our method, okay? The first part really is about creating a foundation and understanding and focusing on your brand, your audience, your data, and your marketing to sales operation, okay? One of the things that we do as a culmination is on that marketing to sales day, everything kind of comes together and we create these marketing to sales maps. And we recognize that this is how we're going to attract, connect, close, and delight the target audience that we have, but to get there, there's always obstacles. It's a new logo, it's a new CRM, it's a new website. There's got to be, there's always an obstacle, a few obstacles, and hopefully it's not too intense. But you got to knock those things out because this is where you want to be. You want to be executing your marketing to sales map and knowing exactly how you're attracting, connecting, closing, and delighting your prospects and customers. And I'll show you how we make it a little bit easier for companies, because what we make them do is we make them make decisions. Foundational decisions, and they have to stick to them, okay? So on the brand side, it's really three different areas. First is a communication. Everybody needs to know the why, how, and what of how you conduct business. Why do we exist? How do we do what we do? What it is that we're doing. Most people know the what, and the how, you really got to dig in to the why. We also want to be able to figure out how we communicate our offering in 7 words or less, and really focus that on the customer. How are we helping the customer? They're the hero, we're Yoda. What are we doing for them? And lastly, we're going to create our value propositions. And one thing that we do that's really different when it comes to our strategies, every piece of creative that we come up with is external. We don't have like internal positioning statements or internal value propositions. If we write it down, it's going to go on the website, it's going to go in marketing materials. Next, we make sure that the visuals really fulfill the brand promise. You know, I've seen companies, especially in the manufacturing space, they make the best products, the highest quality, the best steel, all that stuff, and you go to their website and it looks like it was built in 1997. And you know, you're like, well, you're not quality. You don't really invest in quality. It's not everything that you do. So you got to make sure that the visuals fulfill your brand promise. And it just needs to work cohesively. Everything needs to sound the same, look the same, be really, really consistent. I think that a lot of times with marketing, what we end up doing is our glass half empty is, oh gosh, we keep doing the same stuff over and over again, when we should be listening to our glass half full, which is, this is a consistent message that's going to take a few times to resonate with people. The last section on brand, when it comes to brands, is creating these 2 campaigns. Our first one is an attract campaign, and we create a leading message. We're going to talk a lot about leadership. We call it a leadership message. Aramis has been nice enough to let me share with you guys some of the work that we did when we brought his company through the Purposeful Marketing Method. And the idea with the leadership message kind of goes back to that influence and that thought leadership of what are we doing to attract our target audience through thought leadership. What are we saying that's different than everybody else? How are we doing this? And then the second campaign we help people do is something we call a vision pitch, where we essentially walk, you know, it's that time once you've connected with a prospect and they seem like they're you know, a qualified lead and you want to turn them into a customer. It's really creating this path for them so they can see what their success story would look like if they become your customer. And here's just an example of a leadership message that we did for Aramis's company. They're an IT company, and one of the things that Aramis, you know, we started by going over all the problems that their customers face, And a lot of the stuff that you often see, compliance issues, just not understanding things, security threats always. And then we started going to the emotions to consider, and we started at that fear of security threat because that's the easiest thing. Hey, Sony got hacked. How can it not be you? That's where your mind goes first. But what we really found as we dug deeper, Aramis and his team, was that there's a lot of confusion, and there's also a lot of curiousness about the possibilities of what IT can even do. And we recognize that our point of view is that there's just this new model of security where we live in a subscription culture, so we are going to figure out how we're going to get people to rent things instead of buy them. And we're going to make sure that they understand that through this automation, we can save them money. And it kind of clicked that IT is typically, call the guys, the computers are broken. And what Aramis and his team realized, we don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to help people through the lens of business development be able to grow their operation and streamline what they're doing and save money on employees by automating things with IT. And we're only going to be able to do that by showcasing to them how that can be done and what possibilities exist. And then, our leadership message was the IT is business development. Welcome to 2019. And then we're disseminating the message through an ebook. He's building out a presentation right now that I think is set for to be able to go out in the fall. And then landing pages and scripts so that other people in the organization can understand exactly what this leadership message is. Now on the audience side, there's two things that we think that companies really need to do. And the first thing is figuring out what we call target personas. You may have heard of buyer personas, which is like your direct customer. But I know in B2B, especially professional services, one of the more popular types of marketing is to referrals. And so instead of being like, well, we have referral personas and buyer personas, all right, these are your target audience. We'll just call them target personas. And so what we do is we kind of go through all the different target personas and identify different obstacles that these people are going through, their desires, their tendencies, and then just their general demographic. And then the next thing that we do is we create something we call the customer promise. And this is kind of going back to that point of view, figuring out who can we really help, what are our shared beliefs, and what the people that we're focused on, what do they really want? And on the flip side of that, it's who is the great customer that is not our great customer? And this is really hard for businesses to do. Who can you proverbially break up with and turn away from? And I'm going to talk a lot about this, so I just want to make this clear. I'm not saying fire customers, okay? If you got good customers, that's that maybe aren't they're a little bit more about who you used to be versus where you're going. Don't just get rid of them. That's foolish. What I'm saying is, instead of thinking, okay, I'm for everybody and I can do this, figure out this is exactly the kind of person that I want. And this is the kind of person I don't want. And if this person that I don't want brings something up in a discovery meeting that I can recognize immediately isn't right for them, I'm going to speak up and say, oh, you know what? I don't think we're the best company that can help you for that. Maybe X, Y, and Z can do that. But it's tough for people to do that because, especially in industries even like ours, where everybody can use some sort of service that we provide. We want to be for everybody, but at the end of the day, that's how we get lost in the shuffle. So, one of the things that David and I recognized years ago was that we don't really want to work with startups. We don't want to work with tech startups, which is different from Pankaj, who works directly with startups. And because every startup has a little bit of money to start. They all need trademarks. But when they come to us, it's all about big promises, right? We're going to do this. And then 5 years from now, we're going to go public. And if you could just give me a little break now, it's going to be big. And everyone thinks that they're going to be the next Facebook. And at some point, we just recognize all right, I don't want to have to keep weeding these guys out. I want to work with more established companies who just kind of need to be modernized. And so we had to break up with them in our mind. So this is an example of a target persona that we build out. And this is one of Aramis's personas. His name's Construction Carl. So based on a lot of the hardware stuff that these guys do as an IT company, when they work with a few different construction companies now, these people are constantly building new developments, right? So they constantly need their services. They need to have all the security cameras and the low voltage, all that kind of stuff brought together. But when we started going through all of this, I'm not going to go through each thing, but I highlighted here, how do they find vendors? Aramis is like, man, it's like all referral. It's a good old boy network. These guys aren't searching for an IT company. It's who they know. And so we'll show you, I have their marketing to sales map in a little bit, how we were like, okay, well that's got to be a very account-based marketing focus. That's got to be completely different from, okay, let's run ads on Facebook or run ads on Google. And going through this exercise, you'll realize that these different persona types, these different types of customers that exist within your orbit need to be talked to and gone after in different ways. So next up we have the data. One of the things on data we feel like is really important are what we call most important metrics. This is really similar to the scorecard in EOS for anyone who's familiar with the entrepreneurial operating system. And it's really kind of determining the 7 to 13 most important metrics to your company's growth. And with that, you have to identify what a weekly goal is for each of those. And it needs to be very simple and it needs to be consistent, because if you're looking at this stuff weekly, then your performance and these data points are only then going to dictate behavior, okay? And the idea is to get them so that you're looking at the data consistently and then making different changes so that you're hitting the goals that you're wanting to. Lastly, we work with companies on their budget. We like to do kind of an audit of what's going on. Different companies are different in this. Some people are very open and like Aramis was, and it's honestly it's much easier like that. But at the end of the day, if we can just understand what they need to spend on a monthly basis for their growth, then we can at least work with that, because we need to know those numbers. You're going to see in a second when we get to the marketing to sales map, we got to be very pragmatic with everything that we do. If we're going to try and create these different roadmaps of how we're going to attract, connect, close, and delight prospects and customers, we need to know how much we can spend on that so that we can actually do it tangibly and we don't just try and build Camelot. So this is just an example of a scorecard. This is Aramis's company, construction leads, site traffic, different proposal, conversion-based stuff that's specific to his company, and then a couple accountability things down there: marketing meetings held, management meetings held, company promotional emails sent. And so when you start building all of those things, everything culminates to these marketing to sales maps. And all these do is go through each persona and outline how we're going to attract, connect, close, and delight them. And then we're also going to identify, the purpose, role, or function of each, and we're going to also identify the person who's in charge and any obstacles that might be in the way. So you'll see here on the left we have the attract, connect, close, delight, the purpose, role, or function, the success metrics that we're looking at, the responsible party, and then we identify any obstacles, going back to that idea of that the obstacle sprint, seeing where we might have some hurdles in getting to the promised land. Because this is what the promised land looks like. This is an inbound marketing to sales map here. And so what you'll see is there's an investment in search engine optimization. This is for a target persona in the sign industry. So we just call them sign industry Sam. And they want to do a custom Facebook ads to an email list that they had of the sign industry, and then they wanted to create another custom audience by prospecting a list that on LinkedIn. And one of the important parts of purpose, role, or function is because you can kind of read those and go, okay, well, duh, right? The custom Facebook audience, that we want inbound leads through targeting a different demographic. But the idea is if we're not getting the form fills that we want through that action, we know the purpose, we know what we're trying to do, maybe the action needs to change. Maybe instead of Facebook ads, we should be using Instagram ads. Maybe we should change up how we're doing these things. And so, we created these different ways for people to be able to reach this persona. And then we had, okay, what do we need to do to get them to connect? We got to build a landing page with a strong CTA. We need to support what we're doing with an infographic that they can download. We want to have a testimonial video. We don't have that yet, though. We got to put that on the obstacle list. And then, we want to make sure that if they don't fill out a form, they start seeing retargeting ads. And that's what we're going to invest in, getting this persona to connect with us. And then we create this system for how we're going to get to close. First, we have the 15-minute qualifying meeting, then a 90-minute meeting where we have what we call our vision pitch, and then we'll do some email automation, personal follow-ups. Hopefully we get the customer, delight them. We'll just delight them through our newsletter and monthly check-in calls. And then this is one that we did for Construction Carl, which is much more of that account-based marketing, where we recognize, okay, we got to start attending construction-focused events, preferably where Aramis can be speaking and get in front of people. You know, to get into these worlds, we might need to donate to industry and charity events that they're involved in. And we need to work with our current Construction Carls to understand the industry better, which I believe, Aramis, you guys did. You started, and that's kind of how you figured out the right associations to start being able to present to. And then, you know, to get that connection, we can, you know, showcase some value with the donation. We can schedule introduction meetings after we've proven our credibility in these speaking events. And then from there, you know, your typical, you know, lunch, guided meeting, proposal, all that good stuff. And then we decided, you know, to delight this guy, he's got to get a holiday basket. Every year we're going to take him out for lunch. We're going to give him some Dodger tickets once a year. And then quarterly or annually, somebody's going to go in there and really talk about all the work that we've been doing and really show them how much that we care. And once all that happens, you've got all of those obstacles that you've seen over here, you know, and you aggregate those, and then you got to hit the ground running. And the way that we try and organize it is give yourself 90 days. Because if it's 90 days, then those are real obstacles that you can knock out. Anything more than that is a little bit more of a barrier. So try and do this in a pragmatic way where it's not going to take you 3 months to, you know, build this, you know, the greatest new website to be able to get to marketing the way that you want. You want to try and be able to move a little bit quicker than that. And then, of course, from there, just hitting up these M2S maps. You know, this is kind of the bread and butter. You know, it's the follow through, right? It's, you know, we have the focus, and now it's the follow through. You got to do all the work, make sure that you're hitting your goals and attracting, connecting, closing, and delighting. You're going to be tracking all of the work. So if you're not hitting the goals, how are you going to be changing the behavior? You're going to be able to figure all that out as you're going through everything. So I know I've talked a lot about us and what we do and things that we believe. Today I want to end this with a few things that you guys can do today. The first thing is create a scorecard. This is the easiest thing to do. Anybody can do it. Any company can do it. Those numbers can be anything. I'm going to send you guys an email after this with a template, so it's really easy. And you guys can have that, and it'll be a Google Doc that you can just easily duplicate and turn into an Excel sheet. But create a scorecard. Start simplifying data and using it to your advantage. Look at it every single week and make decisions based on what you're seeing. And then draw out a marketing to sales map. It doesn't have to be for a persona. Maybe it can just be for, you know, all of your customers, but just give it a try. Figure out at each step in this customer life cycle how you want to be able to obtain more, you know, how to be able to get more prospects and how to be able to close more customers. And the last thing you got to do is you got to break up with a great customer that's not your great customer. Okay, told you guys earlier that. I'm going to send you an email with the template. I'm also going to include a link to a survey. Hopefully you guys can give us a little bit of tips on how we can make things better. But one of the questions in there I want to know is who you're going to break up with. I challenge everybody here today to break up with somebody. Again, you're not firing a client. You're just breaking up with a potential prospect down the road, and you're going to call it quits. And with that, I'm done talking. Thank you guys for listening for the last 45 minutes, hour or so. And then let's move to, it gets creepy if it's on there too long. Let's talk about any questions that you guys have. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? We went through a lot of different things.
I got a question.
Ian.
There seem to be so many different websites
Mm-hmm.
that when you use them, they like action websites. They require somebody to respond to you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Do you mean like when somebody goes there, there's like a chat bot that comes up, or? Okay.
Something like that. But what I'm learning, and I'm not the greatest tech guy, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
that there are various companies that provide this type of a service.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you build a website, isn't it kind of strange that you have all these different, you have nothing that's really original to you, it's all these different
Yeah, it's actually,
that you're kind of plugging into your system?
It's a big change that we've seen in development, and Dave and I talk about this a lot, is a lot of development now is about integration. It's about being able to integrate all of these things together. You know, when we talked about that marketing automation software, HubSpot, you know, they're also a CRM, so we have to make sure that those forms are on our site, so when people fill those out, that goes into our HubSpot database. And that's just a small example of how the tech needs to you know, play nice with everything. So you're right that, you know, for a lot of companies, there's not as much originality, but I also feel like that doesn't necessarily prevent customers from being more interested in what you do.
So let me give you an example. You know Trustpilot?
Who?
Trustpilot.
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay. So what Trustpilot do is they provide. You can go there and discuss and rank the website and what kind of service they provided to you, right? So
so it's like a review site.
A review site, right? So you can go there and say, hey, ATAK Interactive were great, and there's like 5 stars, and you rate them, right? So you get 5 stars, you get 1 star, you know what I'm saying? So that particular website is kind of plugged in, right, to a main website that you actually went to. So that's not really original. You know what I'm saying? It's not really original to the website. It's just like another website that you go to.
Yeah, it becomes like a referral source for your website, right? You know, because if people find you on Trusted Pilot.
No, you don't find it on Trusted Pilot. In other words, let's just say you're selling Pepsi Cola.
Okay.
So you go to the website and you buy Pepsi Cola, and you might speak to a salesperson or something, right? And then after the phone call, people go and they say, well, very friendly, very helpful, blah, 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 and they give them a score, right? And it appears on the website, right? But when you figure out where actually you go into, Trustpilot is another website.
It's like you're being forced. I feel like what he's saying is like, it's kind of like when it's like a disingenuous way to be forced. Like it's like in the real world, I suspect is like when you call someone and they go, yeah, we'll do a really good job if you can leave a great Yelp review for us. And you're like, well, could you just do a good job? And then we'll see. I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of going to that point is that if you're doing a good job, then naturally all that stuff's going to work out. You know, I feel like most companies that are doing things the right way typically do get those higher Yelp scores, and those that don't. I mean, it's really just making us all raise our game and have a better product and service, right? So.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but you got this main website that you went to, and suddenly now you're interacting with all these.
Yeah, that's the internet. They're following you around everywhere.
Like, send me your email, chat with Veronica, who's like a bot, like, about your experience.
And that's
consumers being bombarded.
Yeah, and I think that's why you kind of want to focus a lot more of your message and making your CTAs very clear. You know, make sure you make it clear this is what I want you to be able to do, because you're right, those things do get way too noisy. Pangaj, do you have something?
Yeah, so yeah, first, great presentation.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yes, that was a lot of really valuable information. So one thing I really liked was the unifying of like the sales and marketing, which is something that's a pain point I'm experiencing with our firm as we grow, is that like we get a lot of leads, but it's very hard to track. I think to unify the real world and the digital world in terms of tracking. Okay, a call that comes in, lead from our website, and then you have SEO, which is so-called conversions. Those aren't really conversions. Those are clicks on your website or clicks on the app. I mean, they call it. I think it's a bit of a misnomer.
That's not a conversion. No, I mean it's got to be something like a form fill or something. That's a real conversion. Yeah.
It's like, but they say that's a conversion. So, even our ad spend isn't really telling us what's actually hitting, right? And then also now tracking from there, how much that client is worth, right? What's the sales cycle of that client? How long it take, and then what do they earn us? And then can we go back to them and get more out of that client? So
Yeah, what their lifetime value is.
the lifetime value is of that client. So I think unifying that with data and understanding the data is something we struggle with. And I wanted to see what your thoughts are on how you solve that problem.
So what I know what's your CRM? I know it's different.
CRM Streak, which I don't love.
Streak, yeah, and then
It's inside of Gmail, which I like. But
Okay.
Yeah, and we use Zapier to try and connect everything. But it's a bit hacked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where technologies like something like a HubSpot can really make it easy to have everything integrated and all in one place, so that you can really measure those things. The idea is to really kind of simplify a lot of the stuff that you're doing. I know, do you do phone tracking for your?
We do, but like so through Zapier, so we get reception service, and then through Zapier it links it to Streak. So every call that comes in goes into Streak as a lead, but it also produces redundancies because now clients call multiple times, same person. So we have issues with that, but everything does get tracked, but not.
So the way that I would track it is I would start tracking it when like a customer or a prospect becomes important. So maybe that's some sort of marketing qualified lead. So it doesn't matter how many times they call, somebody in your office, better not be you, is asking qualifying questions, and if they find out that this is a person who is a genuine lead, this is not a lead just because they have a form fill, this is a real lead, then start tracking from there. Because the more you get lost in the data of the unimportant stuff, the people who are just getting lost in the weeds, or who are never going to be able to pay for what you do anyway, like it's only gonna make things more conflicting. But if you're like, okay, all right, to get I think we call it like B+ lead, to get a B+ lead, like how much does that cost? And it doesn't matter how many other calls we got, the only one that matters is this plus lead. And then when you start from there, it just becomes much easier to simplify everything. So, hey.
Yeah. What about I'm kind of the breaking up with some customers. So, but since you're sending out messages out there, and if some of these customers that you don't want to work with come upon you because they saw your message, what do you do with it? Do you just ignore? Or?
I think you really figure out how can I help them? Can I help them? Am I the best people to help them? And if you're not at least in the contention for best people to help them, if you know somebody who does things a little bit differently that might be better for them, recommend them. Because in the end, what they're going to do, if you say, listen, that's not really what I focus on. I'm much more focused on this industry, but I've got this great group out of Austin, Texas, and they'll handle you. They're going to be so appreciative that you sent them to the right place, because all we're really doing is trying to help guide customers to make the right decisions for the things that are going to help their business, right? So it's and that's hard. It's hard to do. It's hard because you're like, well, there could be some revenue, but I think there's a lot more of a long-term value in being able to be somebody who's very valuable to other people. And I mean, yeah, even it was in a conversation yesterday, and I was just talking about sales, and it's like, oh yeah, you wouldn't be right for me and what I do, but I think there's this other type of person who would be right for you, and like that's just I always appreciate that as a consumer, and so I try and do that as a business person as well. Anybody else? We're probably getting on time, aren't we? All right, cool guys. Well, thank you so much for coming out today. Like I said, I'll send you guys all a follow-up email with some of those templates, and I really would appreciate if you guys could fill out that survey for me, just so I could get a little feedback on how everything went from that side. And again, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.